guys, welcome to my levitation tutorial. I'm just going to go over the basics, really, how you kind of achieve this image, and just go over some basic masking and dodging and burning. So this is going to be our background. It's a HDR image taken with multiple exposures, and this is our subject, our foreground, which will be removed whilst on top of our background image. Okay, so for this one I did some multiple exposures and used a couple of speed lights to get it looking how I wanted it to look. I knew I wanted to do some HDR, and you can see one of the speed lights there, and I knew that's what was going to happen, and this is the flat version, but you guys can obviously do whatever you want for your background. I might just open that up in Photoshop here, which is already open, obviously. And then if I go and select my picture of the model, I'm going to use this one, but for my final image I ended up using one of the other ones because she had a better shape to her, but as you can see there's a bit of a lens flare there, and I had to replace the whole of her arm. So for this tutorial I'm just going to use one that's a bit easier to show you guys how you go about removing all the rubbish. We just open that up into Photoshop as well. Now I don't really need to do much to this because most of this will be cut out, leaving just the model. So I don't really need to do anything to this. It looks okay. What I will do is just kind of play around, get the model looking a bit better. Some of the skin brightening, and that looks okay. Okay, so what we are going to need to do is we are going to need our selection tool, press V, and hold down Alt to drag it across onto this comp. And we will just close down the other one. And now we just want to make sure this is aligned with the backdrop. Now I did use a tripod, which you're going to want to do, but when you press the button sometimes it can still knock the image out slightly. So what we're just going to do is just drop the opacity, and you can see the background, so you're going to want to try and line everything up as best you can. I use the middle because that's where the model is, so that matters the most. I'm going to try and line it up with those trees, and then just set the opacity back up. So there are a few ways we could do this. We could use the eraser tool, which is E on the keyboard, and we could use it on a hard setting, and that would work. But the way we're going to do it is we're going to use layer masks. And for those who aren't too sure about masks, I will try and explain best I can as I go. But you're going to want to click on your layer and select layer mask, which is this little grey box with a white circle in. And you press that, and then make sure your layer mask is selected, and you'll know it's selected because it'll have a little line around it. And then how the layer mask works is you select the brush, and if the layer mask is white and you use the black paintbrush, it will erase our image, leaving behind what we don't want, and then the white one will bring anything back. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to switch back over to the black and erase all of this stuff, this junk we don't need. And it doesn't matter about the harsh edge because we'll clean that up, and we'll use a lower opacity brush closer to the edges that we want to keep. But it doesn't really matter at this moment. Don't have to be too neat. And so now what I do typically is go down and here you go. So if you erase something by mistake, then you can just switch back over to the white, and bring that detail back. That detail is always there on a layer mask. That's the difference when you use the eraser tool, it's actually gone. So layer mask's pretty useful. So now what we want to do is we want to turn the opacity down, and we can turn the hardness down as well, and this will allow for a more clean blend with the background. Don't forget to switch back over to the black. Okay, so now you'll see this will blend much cleaner with both layers. Again, you don't have to be too neat with this, but one thing you have to remember is if the layers aren't completely aligned, you'll end up with ghosting. So what I recommend is you just go over those areas that look slightly ghosted, and that will remove any ghosting. Again, around here you don't have to be too neat because we're not too close. But you've got to remember, when you're on one of the softer brushes and the bigger brushes, it can expand to outside of the circle. So you need to be careful. If you're working closer to something that you want to keep, then you could make the brush smaller, and then that way you're not going to erase something by mistake. Just here you can see all the ghosting that I was on about. I'm going to try and minimize this, so go over it a few times just so it reveals the bottom layer more. And there we go, and you can see that it's less ghosty. It doesn't matter the closer we get, because hopefully people won't be looking at the background too much. We try and help sell the image by keeping it clean though. And just up here, there's quite a lot of ghosting. That's looking pretty good. It's blending quite nicely. Not too bad. Obviously, if this was my actual image, there would be a lot more time and a lot more care going into this. But seeing as this is just for you guys, to get an idea how you would do something like this. So what we're going to want to do now is we're going to want to make our brush smaller, because otherwise it will start to erase the arm. Even though you can see it's not in the circle, when it's softened like that, it's feathered and it will run into the arm. So we need to make it smaller. It's not going to matter too much with this. You guys will obviously spend a lot more time and care. Using a lower opacity, you may need to go over a few things a couple of times. So like here, this line, just go back over it and it will erase eventually. I seriously expect you guys to take a lot more time. You can, around the hair, the good news about using a low opacity is you can go over this hair and the fine strands, and they'll still stay there, so it doesn't look cut out. Ideally, I would have gone a bit closer, and the same with the face. You can go really close with a smaller brush, and it won't matter too much. If I go any closer with this, it'll start to run off into the face and the skin. And with there, you can just remove the extra ghosting from the background. I don't think it's actually lined up properly. I'll try and move that in a minute. You can just see the additional ghosting, it just looks a bit of a mess. Try and clean that up. Okay, that's looking quite cool. And obviously we've got a smaller brush, so we can go a bit closer to the skin. Okay, and here you'll notice she is going to be missing half of her butt cheek. In the final image, I kind of rebuilt it. I'm not going to bother doing that here. So, I mean, if I shot this image again, what I would do is have the model sit closer to the edge of the stand or whatever you're using. So that's definitely my tip to you guys. If you're going to attempt something like this, just have them sit closer, because later on you're going to have to rebuild that. I'm not going to do it here because I did try this tutorial earlier on tonight and the computer crashed, and that was one of the most time consuming parts, just rebuilding that and getting it to look good. So as a tip, just get her to sit close to the edge so she actually has it in the final picture. I don't think mine you could tell too much. And then just with a smaller brush you can go around getting all these little cracks, just helps sell the image a bit more. It'd be taking a lot more time if it was my actual picture. And there we go, she's lost her finger, so I'm going to have to bring that back. Just undo it. Alt Command Z. I keep my fingers pretty close to them. That will undo straight away. And then just with a really tiny one going in between the fingertips and the fingers. And I'm using a tablet to do this, but you guys can do this on a mouse as well. Until recently, I only ever used a mouse or a touchpad. But if you guys are going to do any real photoshopping, I strongly advise getting a Wacom tablet or something. It's definitely made my life easier for the editing I do. And it's a bit of a pain at first, but you really get into it. Okay, it's not looking too bad now. Obviously, I realise her ass is missing. For my final image, that would have been fixed. But like I said, I can't really be too bothered. I think the image is out slightly there. You can see it's a bit of ghosting. But overall, it looks like she's floating, so we did alright. We can try and align it a little bit. Just line her up with those trees. And minimise the ghosting. That looks alright, it looks a bit better. And what I would do before finishing this, I would touch her up, I would edit the skin, remove blemishes, smooth her out, and also use like some sort of liquify to make it look like she is contorting to the air. So next we're going to do some light trickery, because I only used one light and I want it to look like I used a few. I'm going to duplicate the background layer and then merge the top mask with that. So we've got the background and the foreground all merged now on one layer. And now when I shot this, I only had one flash gun, so I used, for the foreground, for the model, I just placed it behind her directly, creating some kind of rim light or key light, and leaving as a nice highlight behind the body. But ideally I'd have liked a few more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to burn in some shadows and some lighting, basically. We get the burn tool from the tools, and we can have it set to midtones. That's cool, and I usually use about exposure 7%. I find that's nice. If we need more, we can just go over the same area. I should really be doing this on another layer, just so you guys can see the before and after. So just duplicate layer, Command E on the keyboard, and then select your dodge tool, set to midtones, about 5, 6, something like that. And then we're just going to go over all the highlights and the midtones just to make it look like we had a light above her, or there's a light coming from above her. So we're going to work on her face, just bring out light on her face. Don't do too much, you don't want it to overexpose, and go along the highlights and on her legs, on her feet and her arms, and basically just give the illusion that there's there's a nice big soft box in the sky above her. And you guys obviously take a bit more time on this and make it look good. That's looking pretty good. It's looking a lot brighter. And there we go. So it looks alright. We've given the illusion that there's a bigger light above it. And then what I like to do for something like this is I wanted it to seem like there was a light, you know, picking her up off the ground, so to speak. So I just dodged in the ground just underneath her. Not too bright. It's really, again, down to personal taste. I did it a little bit. I definitely wanted you to notice that it was there. And also what we can do is we can do a bit around the body to make it look like she's glowing. There are multiple techniques of doing this. This was the easiest. You just touch the model slightly as well. Go around the body and make it look like the light is kind of picking her up, I guess. Another thing I wanted to do is this tree over on the left seems a tad bright, a lot brighter than the rest of the scene. So we just used the burn tool and go over it a few times just to darken it, make it seem a bit more realistic, so it doesn't stand out so much. What we can always do as well is go around the rest of our scene and make it seem a bit like a vignette, just to give more focus to our subject. And just going around the ground, just around the edge, missing our dodged section that we have already done. It's looking alright. I want to go over that tree a little bit more. Okay, let's see. Looks pretty cool. Just a tad more here. And on the day we had some light coming in through the trees there, which I planned on using as our primary light source, but my HDR conversion muted it slightly and removed the flares, and you can see a little bit of it there. So we will put our own flaring later on. For this tutorial I'll just use one of the stock ones that comes with Photoshop, which I don't really like, but we can edit it slightly to make it fit a bit more. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get some leaves off the ground and throw them up in the air, try and help sell the image a tiny bit more. And what we do is select our lasso tool. There are two options. There's the polygon lasso tool, which works edge to edge, which is fine for straight lines and other bits and pieces, but for this we're just going to use the free lasso tool, the freehand lasso tool, and we're just going to try and spot a leaf that we could use. There you go, this yellow one looks pretty good. We just select that. Doesn't have to be the neatest because we will be blurring it later on. So we select that, and if we Command C, that will copy, and Command V will paste and create a new layer, and V for your selection tool, and we'll just pick that bad boy up and position it somewhere. Now, anyway you guys want, so if you press Command and T, that will be free transform, and we can kind of make it our own. Now be sure to hold Shift when resizing objects, and it will help maintain the correct ratio, not make it look too funky. So on here we want to just make it look a bit random, and now we can just use the same leaf again, Command and J I think it is on the Mac as standard, to duplicate, and just drag that one around. And you want to make it a little bit different, so maybe resize it, holding Shift. You can just play with this one to get it how you want. again, you can Command J or right click and duplicate, and just go again with another leaf. Now I used a few different leaves. I used the brown one, a yellow one, a few other funky looking ones off the ground. But for this tutorial video, I'm just going to use the one leaf. So if you hold Command E, that will merge all 3 leaves, and Command J or right click and duplicate, we will end up having double the leaves. And if we just rotate that and just make it look a little bit different for this scene, there we go. So it looks like now there are a few leaves. Again, we're only going to use this one leaf, but you guys can go and select your own and just position them where you want, randomly across the scene. Okay, and now if we see there's plenty on the ground, we could use another one, but I'm just going to use the same leaf again, I guess. So you can merge, so shift and select both layers, Command E or merge and duplicate, and we've got loads of leaves. Okay, and just position to taste, and Command E will merge all these leaves to one layer, and now we can just play with them how we want. I think for this what we're going to do is we're going to apply some motion blur to give the illusion that they are moving. So make sure your layer is selected with V, the selection tool, and up to filter on the top bar, and motion blur in the blur filter. And the amount you guys do this is really down to you and personal preference. 1 being not very, and 30 being kind of a happy medium, and the viewing angle. So I wanted it to be either going up or down, so I want mine to kind of straight line. And I think I settled on about 31 or 33. 30 is okay, so make sure you've got your preview button selected so you can see in real time what it's going to look like. I think that looks pretty good. So we press OK. That will apply to our image. And we can link this to our previous layer, because I think we're done with that now. So if you want to, yeah, that looks cool. You want to select both layers, shift and click whatever you're using, and Command E will merge them down, or right click and merge. So now it's all on one layer. That looks good. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add some flare just to replace the flare that got lost in post. I don't really like any of these, but I guess the 105 will do for this purpose. And again, the brightness, try not to overdo it because it can destroy a picture. It's really powerful. So even in the little preview, it doesn't look that much, but as you can see, this is quite a lot. I think this is quite a good amount for our image here. But what I want to do is I want to do it on a new layer. So if I just Command Alt and Z, that will undo my last step, and Command J to duplicate this. And now I've got a new layer, I can just apply that filter and it will remember where I put it on the last one. So now we've got it. And the reason I wanted to duplicate this layer is because I plan on removing the little circle flares that happen towards the edge of the image. And you guys might not want to do this, but I plan to crop later, so they're not really a problem. But if you guys want to keep the whole image, then you would obviously want to chop them out or keep them. And here, if you do it on the skin, you have to remember that the flare is causing the light, and it will cut out the light, making it seem a bit odd. So you might have to clone out that flare. So before and after looks okay. I think it just adds an extra dynamic, and it helps sell it because it looks like it's hitting her there. What I like to do is just click the crop tool. I'm a big fan of panoramic looking pictures, and so if we just find a nice position here, I wanted to sell it a bit more, so I wanted to, have a bit of the floor and a bit of the sky, and so I came to a happy medium here. I think you could still tell that she was floating, so I'm going to go ahead and press the little tick. And don't forget, when you were moving around all the layers to arrange it, your edges could be out slightly, so you might want to crop them, just like I've done on the right there. Just wait for the computer to catch up. Okay, that looks cool, but what we're going to want to do now is just add a bit of colour to this. So I like to use the photo filter, just down in the adjustments at the bottom there. That looks alright. And I'm going to add a bit of contrast using the curves layer. You guys can do this using the contrast and brightness, or you might want to create a nice S-curve on the RGB, but for this I'm just going to pull it down a little bit, and that looks okay. So we're going to apply a levels layer and just take down the blacks a little bit. I think it gives that faded look that I like to use. Don't tell anyone. And that looks pretty good. Obviously you guys will take these techniques and tips and apply them to your own image